People, a quick one. Arsenal versus Spurs is currently half time. But what was I going to say? People, a couple of people have asked me to put myself in the shoes of Pochettino in regards to United, the United links. Now, I'm not as United fan, Spurs fan, or whatever, but if I'm Pochettino, as non-biased as it can be, there's a serious list of pros and cons for both staying at Spurs and possibly departing. Now, let's start with the pros of Spurs. Now, again, he's a head coach, and he probably is frustrated a lot with a lot of Daniel Levy and not being to given finances and all of these things. But Wenger's probably the Wenger, Eddie Howe. You look at Wenger previously, look at Eddie Howe to a degree. In fact, Pep Guardiola as well, Klopp to a degree. You could say Rafa. There's only a handful of managers that have really been at a club for a decent period of time, or you can really stay. You can, or if they haven't, you can see staying at that club for a period of time. You can see that with Poch. Obviously, if results went a certain way, and typically happens, whether he was like you've seen with Wenger or Jose at many a club, etc. Things were to happen and they would depart. I think both parties would do that, and I do think most logical Spurs fans understand that this guy, although he hasn't won a trophy, and that's one of the major talking points used to belittle him, which I think is nonsense. Because of the way he's going as a manager, normally this collates to managing. I know he said he'll never manage it, but just to use it as an example, the Barcelonas, the Real Madrids, the previous clubs in PSG, they understand. I'm sure they accept that he's not going to be like Wenger and be at Spurs for years and stuff. He will leave one day. But he started a project at Spurs. I mean, he's got to put his real... It goes on to say, I mean, a lot of people say managers need to put their mark on the team and stuff, but it is really difficult. It takes a lot of time, and it can be frustrating for a manager to do a lot and then have to start again. He's been given time to build his side. They know how he works. He knows how they work. He's got a good group of players. He's undoubtedly comfortable in London, and specifically going to Spurs every day and them things there. His family are probably settled. Spurs still have an exciting project, because as much as I do think at times they get a lot of too much praise, I'm an Arsenal fan. Obviously, the elephant in the room, if they're spoken about as being one of the greatest sides in the last few years, they need to put a title challenge in. With that, I'm sure they all want to. Obviously, everybody wants to win trophies. The carrot of doing that and getting to the final end with your squad, that could be done. But there's a lot of benefits to stay at Spurs. I mean, it's a very good job to see through, and I think Spurs. I do think there's pressure on him, but let's be honest, there's less scrutiny on Pochettino than there would be a Wenger or a Jose, regardless, or Pep or whatever, regardless of what you think of the manager. I'm not belittling Poch, but it is a fact. Wenger is fried. Wenger, pardon my language, was fried for the last few years. He hasn't won a title or aspired to try and win major trophies, or that whether he wanted to or not. The fact is we didn't. That's why he lost his job. If Pep was to stop competing for for City, he'd lose his job. Jose's not competitive. I think obviously Spurs fans want to be competitive and the club want to be competitive, but what I'm saying is if he was to put Spurs in United's position, for example, and swap the two teams, obviously again there'll be scrutiny, but I don't think necessarily Spurs would get rid of Pochettino. So it's the pressure of not necessarily winning a title and being judged and other things can collate. There's still pressure, but that's a big plus point. For me, he should stay at Spurs. But if we look at the cons of Spurs now, it might not, very much, I hope it is, but it won't. It might not be like Arsenal where there's a new stadium, they have to sell players. But if we just look at that, obviously Toby's announced a new deal, not Toby, sorry, Jan Vertonghen's announced a year extension to 2020. Toby Alderweireld's, his contract situation, will he stay, will he not, and the whole release clause stuff. These sort of experienced players might be either sold because of the stadium stuff, or and their contract demands and wanting to join more competitive sides, or just sold to help fund off the stadium or whatever needs to be paid. To which obviously it's going to be frustrating. If you look at that side and you think the first few players you're looking at that you could see leaving, you're looking at the two centre halves in Toby and Alderweireld. You're obviously looking at Harry Kane. I think Kane, out of all of them, would probably be the last to leave. I think Kane would similar have to be like Henry in 06. You'd have to see everybody go and really believe that the project can't be done at Spurs. But Spurs, I mean, if they really wanted to clear off debts and they didn't care for football, what the fans had to say, Harry Kane's bringing in a ridiculous amount of money for the club. Obviously, there's Dele Alli, there is Eriksen, and you can list several players. So for a manager, that's frustrating. He's built this side, he's got them playing the way he wants, and to see it built, ripped up and ripped to shreds might be something of frustrating, and he might concede that, alright, cool, I can't start again. He might also concede that he's taking, I don't think he is, but he's taking the Spurs side as far as possibly he could take them. That could be something else playing on his brain as well. So obviously the frustration of having to rebuild a side, what could be austerity measures at Spurs. Obviously Spurs, they didn't sign a player, so there's clearly something in the background in regards to targets and stuff. to be honest, Pochettino could use that as leverage. If there is any real funds available, he could use that as leverage and say, listen, United are really on my case. If I was him, I would actually, it's 50-50 people, admittedly. I'd really be open to joining Manchester United, and I'd really be open to staying at Spurs, man. It's literally 50-50. Oh, he'll have to look in his heart of hearts. I do think he'll stay, but the prospect of United, first and foremost, he's a trainer coach, he's a head coach. He obviously spends money and stuff, and he's had a lot of successes and failures in that department, but he wants to work with what he has. He's used to working under things like that. Obviously, United got open purse strings, but the whole spending crap loads of money approach didn't work. So a trainer coach that can implement a style, work with young players, improve existing players, and do things like that, and get the base and the foundation installed, to know you're able to do that. And then if you look at your side and you need a final little more players, you need a centre half, a keeper, or a this and that, the club have money to do it. Now, the board at United didn't back Jose, whether they believed in him or not with the transfers. I don't think Poch would obviously not suffer from that, because they have to back an incoming manager, but that's something to think about. Obviously, the pressure, he has to win trophies. They'll give him time, of course, because he's obviously won. He's obviously got to take time to build the side, but he'd have to win trophies and compete, and whether it would be rightly or wrongly to criticise him, this is the beast that players have to go against. The prospect of returning United back to the pinnacle, like I said, you be able to spend money, able to build your side, is probably something you really couldn't turn down. Ultimately, I don't think United have a more competitive side than Spurs, but on the basis that they have a checkbook that's blank, essentially, they can assemble that. So the prospect of that, the prospect of returning to the pinnacle, the prospect of being the first manager to possibly win a Champions League or Premier League post Alex Ferguson, it's a massive call. To say you haven't had Manchester United on your CV is a big enough. I keep looking because the game's about to kick off, but to say you've had Manchester United on your CV, it's a pinnacle of all managers. Let's keep it 100. Albania United, but that's a big club to play for, or say you've managed. There's certain clubs, obviously United aren't currently where the Madrids and Barca's, which he said he won't manage, but there's some clubs that only come calling once or twice, and when they come, you've got to go. So it's different. It's difficult. For what it's worth, if I was him, I wouldn't leave mid-season. I would wait for United, or have some assurances, possibly, of structures being put into place for my arrival, being backed in the transfer market. Possibly, can I bring my own backroom staff? Pros and cons around possibly sporting directors and things like that, whether he wants or doesn't want them. But if they was to get the structure right at United, Pochettino could do some great work, and maybe it's something that he wouldn't turn down. For me personally, as non-biased as it is, it's literally 50-50. I'd be incredibly enticed by Manchester United and what they have to say, and I'd probably try and bring Toby with me. But at the same time, what I've built at Spurs, the stability I get at Spurs, I get scrutinised, but possibly the more understanding approach, the less sort of trophies equal success. There's different measures of success at Spurs. Is something to stay at. Ultimately, the dream would be to build your side and win a league title and things like that. Now, the key comes down to will he be backed in the transfer market, and that will be it. If he's not backed properly, I'm not saying give him crap loads of money they don't have, but if he's not backed properly, he could concede that, okay, do you know what, I've had enough of this, essentially, man. Like, it is what it is. I've taken Spurs as much as I can, and the changes I want to make I can't implement. But I don't know, this is just an Arsenal fan's 2 pence in it. But on that note, the game is about to kick off. I got to return, so comment, subscribe, and do the rest. I'm out. Big DG, the best in this.